Hello and welcome to ThisConnect. Today we are talking about a topic that we are both fascinated about, right?
Fascinated, huh?
Aren't we?
Absolutely.
I mean, fascinated is your word, but especially after that reel. But tires, I think, are fascinating. When did you first notice that tires float your boat, as it were?
I think I would have been in school, maybe third or fourth standard, something like that.
Why?
Because we used to live in a little village, Khopoli, right? It's between Bombay and Pune now.
I don't know that the people who live in Khopoli would take well to you calling it a village.
It was a village. Now it's
Now it's a town.
you could call it a small town, but it was literally a village back then. There was 2-3 industries. That's about it, right? And we used to every now and then come on weekends to Bombay, right? And as it was called then, Mumbai now, right? And at Marine Drive, you'd see every now and then you'd see these imported cars, right? And that used to be like, wow, what a moment. And that's when you first time you noticed tires that were like that big, right? And you're like, that's possible? You didn't even know that there were tires that big, that wide. And you'd see them sticking out of the cars like little bit like, and from the back you could really see how wide they were. So yeah, I think around about then.
Wow, I don't think I noticed tires like for the longest time.
Really?
Yeah, so I mean, I was fascinated by the vehicle, but the tire as a component of that picture was not really important to me. Okay, that look, whatever you saw F40 poster and you saw the tire on it, you're like, wow, that's a big size tire. But that was like momentary thought. The F40 was to me far more fascinating than those tires. Then I bought the Kinetic Honda, the first thing I got, and who cares about scooter tires, right? Strangely enough, even today, all the scooter tires you test are generally so good. It's very difficult to find a bad scooter
Today,
tire.
yeah.
So you don't really notice it because the variation isn't too much. Then I got the KB125,
Oh,
which had
yes.
the weird knobby
ATT.
tires.
100 as we used to call it.
Yeah.
Because it was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it was like this weird set of knobbies on a bike that actually handled really sweetly and went really nicely. And I think it took me, 800 kilometers or a week of riding or something like that to stop at a MRF shop on the way back. And at that point, all the magazines, Car and Bike International, whatever, they were all saying the MRF Zapper is the king of the tires or whatever. Walked in, swapped, I think 1400 rupees I paid, swapped me to Zappers. And the guy's like, what do I do with your new tires? I'm like, I don't care. He's like, no, as in you can take them back if you want. For what? Because you know how wobbly it was, right?
Yeah.
So I said, what would I do with these tires? So
They were like almost practically off-road oriented tires in that sense.
Yeah.
They had the sharp shoulder.
all of that.
Yeah.
All of that. I remember taking a left turn through an intersection where the green was mine. So I was going quite quickly. And I remember the bike going like, whoa. And you're like, I know that the bike doesn't do this, so it must be the tires, right? Swapped out to Zappers, left those brand new ATTs back there. And transformation. The KB came into its own and said, these are the tires that's supposed to be. I mean, today's Bajaj R&D is very different from that. But back in the day, I mean, I would have gone and hit somebody saying, why these? Why a knobby set of tires on a KB125? What sense does that make?
Yeah. I was actually so much of a tire geek that at the time when we really started getting, new brands in India, like when Hyundai came and all, and that's when we started getting like Bridgestones and stuff like that. I used to know tire sizes of every vehicle, right? Not just, okay, the rim size is 13, 14, whatever. I would know the tire sizes. I could tell the tires from the patterns they left in the dust or in the mud. I would say, that's a Bridgestone, that's an MRF. And it was literally like that. And now I don't remember any of that.
So that's not called a geek, huh? In the British journalism parlance, that's an anorak.
Anorak.
An anorak is a person who has a lot more information than they need, and they really don't know what to do with that information, but they have it anyway.
So I would be able to tell what tires they were and roughly be able to say, if this is this is then this car. So yeah, it was pretty much useless in that sense.
Why are tires so important?
Okay, an admission here. I was that guy. I was the guy who would look at a car which had wider tires with spacers, so they were pushed out, and just transformed the way the car looked, right? So it was a very stupid, childish aesthetic aspect that drew me to Tyres, right? Because it made the car look cool. Doing these couple of things, just suddenly the stance of the car would change,
Yeah,
right?
it would.
I didn't understand what the implications were, and it was like, "Jab gaadi lunga, tab ye karunga." And then as I got older, and I would talk to somebody like an uncle, I remember, and he's saying, "Why would you want to do that?" Because I remember he wanted to get a Gypsy, and I was like, "Okay, we'll get those spacers, we'll put the wheels out." He's like, "I don't want to keep bumping into stuff." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, because you won't be able to understand how wide your car is because you're used to a particular size." And that was the first time I thought about, oh, yeah, that's something you'll have to get used to. And then he told me about how it'll scrub and all. I was like, oh, there's a dampener to all of this.
Yeah.
It's not so easy, right?
Yeah.
But I was that guy, yeah.
So your Ignis doesn't have any spacers and the tires don't stick out.
My secret plan is that, I mean, once my wife Vanita is done with the car, which I think is soon, rally flaps, bigger tires, get nice alloys.
Bigger tires being like massively larger or just one or two sections larger?
Just, I think, one size larger, just.
So a functional improvement, not just an aesthetic one. Because I'm the opposite, okay? I have never been fascinated by the width of the tire or the tread pattern and all this. To me, this is somebody else's problem, as it were, right? I remember the first time we had a serious tire discussion was RD350s. I had two of those. And they had that usual rib in the front and that weird MRF, that crosshatch kind of pattern that you see on Enfields until recently. That pattern rear. And they were square profile tires, more or less. And it was a weird setup. But at that time, the CBZ had just come out and it had that Dunlop Geo something tire. I'm forgetting the name.
I had the CBZ and I had those tires and they were atrocious.
Yeah, so, but they were an upgrade from the square profile because at least when you leaned the bike, they were rounded, right?
Yeah.
So that discussion was, it was like the thing. So then when I got the MRF zappers, I think on the RD also, and then it would be like, why didn't you get the Geos? They are better or worse. That's the first time you started thinking about tires. But I think the bike that brought the quality of a tire and what it does to your motorcycle home was the Fiero.
Fiero, huh? Oh.
Yeah, the Fiero had tires that were, for all practical purposes, made of wood.
Ah, that way. I was thinking they were awesome. I was like,
no, they were
wow,
absolutely terrible. Okay, they were terrible tires on a flawed motorcycle in terms of the chassis balance because it was all rear. So I remember Sachin Rao and me, we were at Harihareshwar, the beach near south of Mumbai. And we were shooting a story and they'd just finished and it was sunset, like just orange light sunset. He was ahead on the Pulsar 150, which was the more powerful of the two machines. I was behind on the blue Fiero that we had as a long-termer. And I said, I'm going to keep up. And the amount of fighting that I had to do with the Fiero to keep up, even today, says I bring so much to motorcycling. And the motorcycle does some things for me. And I love that balance. But the reason I had to fight it so hard was not the chassis balance. It was the fact that the tires were just bad.
Really?
You know how bad?
Yeah, tell me.
We put 8,000 kilometers on that bike, including engine braking, locking up the rear regularly because it was just like this, right? So the front would never touch the ground properly. So you'd have to climb over the front to get the front brakes to work. At 8,000 kilometers, the little hair on the tire from the molds, they were still there.
No way.
We had failed to break off the hair.
No way.
It was bad. It was really, really bad.
That's
so,
steel grade.
Yeah. So, if when this particular human civilization is long gone, then the aliens come a couple of million years later and they find fossils. I'm convinced Fiero tires will be in there looking mint. But when you switched between the Pulsar and the Fiero, you began to understand that chassis engineering was a thing.
Right.
But tires were a massive thing. Because as soon as you changed it, you'd get a completely and totally different experience.
Right. So, I mean, in fact, when I bought the CBZ, I made a massive mistake. And this is, again, learning through the, experience, right? So, you got to suffer a bit to learn well. So, back then, CBZ was also being offered with the Zappers or the Dunlops, right? So, I looked at the CBZ tire, the MRF Zapper. That was a new Zapper at that point, right? Because they had the three size earlier, and then they came with the wider section. And it didn't have a center tread, right? It didn't have a groove.
Yeah, the center groove was not there.
That doesn't make any sense. How are we going to ride on our roads during monsoons and stuff like that? I said, it makes no sense. I'm not going to go for that, which is why I chose the Dunlop. I said, this is a stupid design. Only to realize that the Dunlop with its center groove and all its cuts and siphons and everything was Terrible, especially in the wet. Especially in the wet. I got rear-ended at a signal twice in a downpour in Pune back then, because my bike just couldn't move off the line. It was pouring so hard. There was water streaming down the road, but the rear just couldn't hook up.
Yeah.
It just couldn't hook up. So
Yeah.
I actually pushed it off the signal. There was just this one car behind me, and I don't. It's not the bike's fault in that case. Yes, it couldn't move, but she had no reason to rear-end me twice at the same light. But it did happen. Thankfully, nothing major. And that's when I said, "I'm done with this.
Yeah, so
I'm not going."
the
back."
Fiero, city walk signal in Bandra, coming to a halt in the middle of the rain concrete road, right? I did everything that I normally do, and I came to a stop 90 degrees to traffic pointed at the city walk shop. It skidded, and came to a stop like this. So I'm looking over my shoulder, and all the traffic is over here, and the intersection is over here. I have no idea why.
Oh crap!
It was that bad. Like, it was that kind of unpredictable. And riding it through the Mumbai monsoon, in those days, traffic was lighter, obviously, 20 years ago. But it was hilarious because you just didn't know when it was going to slide.
Right.
When did it become obvious to you that if you change to a better tire,
Right.
regardless of its size, it makes a dramatic difference to the car or bike that you're on?
So I think again with the CBZ, when I realized that this tire doesn't work, I had Mr. Apte in Pune get me a tire from, I think back then, Singapore, which was a radial. It was a Dunlop, and it was fantastic. And that was only the rear, right? Back then, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get what you can get, right? So I got that. And it was slightly wider. It wasn't intentional. It was what was possible, right? So I think it was a 120 or something like that. So he got that in, and suddenly the entire behavior and the possibility of the motorcycle changed completely. And I think with something like a CBZ, which you'd see as a sports vehicle, back then it was a sporty motorcycle. It was a fantastic unlock. But at the same time, my dad also had an 800, right? And the 800 originally didn't have radials, right? So it used to drive, ride, and all of that.
And float a little bit at higher speeds.
Exactly.
I had the exact same experience, and we got to
Exactly.
radials too, yeah.
Yeah, and when we shifted to radials, suddenly you're like, this car's changed.
Yeah.
It feels like a different car.
Yeah.
Suddenly the sense of confidence and everything was dramatically changed. And the 800 was a peppy little thing, right? And back then the roads were empty, and I had to do early morning driver duties for my sister at 4:30 in the morning. I used to go drop her for classes to school, and our school was all the way across town. So coming back, it was like empty roads, and you're just like, and you're like, yeah, this feels good.
Yeah, so I convinced my dad to move from cross plies to radials too on our 800. And I don't think for the entire duration that the first radials were on the car, he understood why we changed it.
Right.
Because he doesn't go fast at all. My dad is like calm driving. Now that he doesn't drive anymore. And I was the opposite, right? It's doing 90, 95 every time the road is empty. And on the cross plies, it sort of float above the road. And he didn't have a sense of control. Radials, overnight change. I don't even think we did alignment properly that time because I was too much in a rush. What a different car. But I think it accumulated over the years. I also remember a drive where we had the Lancer and the CDR both.
Right.
And the Lancer used to come with 322s, the Bridgestones.
322s, yes.
But the CDR had 248s. And
I remember the patterns.
Yeah, I don't remember the pattern. I remember the numbers. And we were coming up onto a bridge that was a 90-degree right.
Yeah.
And Param, our photographer and tester at that point of time, had the CDR sideways in front of us while Bijoy was driving very carefully. I think some of the luxuries of having empty roads and knowing the terrain because we'd gone up that road half an hour earlier. And I was asking Bijoy, and I remember Bijoy was the editor of BS Motoring where I started.
Right.
And Bijoy is like, when you have a very good chassis, like on that CDR, you can afford to run poor tires because it makes up for the lack of the tires. But this Lancer will always feel better than the CDR because the chassis is of the same capability. But the 322s are just so much better tires.
Correct.
So he is sideways because he thinks it's the fastest way to go. But I can match that speed, braking and turning, because these tires are so much better that it'll just do it.
Right.
So the power of a great frame is unlocked by this tire.
Correct.
Whereas that great frame allows poorer tires to continue to work.
Correct.
On motorcycles, when did you notice this?
on motorcycles, unlock. I have a fantastic example for this. Mahindra Mojo.
Hmm.
That is a motorcycle which has a bend in the middle, a hinge in the middle.
Yeah.
So going into a corner, typically you will say one steering input, place, hold, throttle, go, right? On the Mojo is the one motorcycle. I remember taking one corner and giving maybe 3 or 4 steering inputs to just keep it going.
But what rider engagement that used to create, right?
Like, you really don't need a racetrack. You just need to take a right turn out of your building and it's
At
enough.
50 kmph, you get thrills.
It's done. So on that bike, it came with Rosso 2s, right? Saving grace. If it weren't for the Rosso 2s, I think I may have just chosen not to ride that motorcycle.
Agreed.
It was not something, I mean, as much as it's to say like, rider involvement, but there was no side. It was just like this Russian roulette with, you never know when it's going to go, right? In that sense. And you're just like, okay, the tires will manage, just manage, the tires will manage. That's about it.
Yeah, so to me, when I rode that bike, and I quite enjoyed my first ride, because I was in the mind state of the Fiero. Saying the bike is not bringing much to the table. Although that engine was lovely, but the chassis was not bringing much to the table. So I have to do all of the rest of the work. So I think we were going up from Hassan side towards Madikeri or something on that first ride. And I pushed that thing around corners for everything that it was worth. Knowing that I would do 90% of the heavy lifting and the chassis would do 10% of the work. And the tires were there in the background holding it all together.
Correct.
So I think it became even more obvious when the faster machines started coming. Like, remember the unlock that you felt when you rode the W-rated Metzeler M5s on the first KTM 200, no, not 200, 390.
390.
The 200 had very nice revs as well.
Yeah.
These tires were also on the R15s. But on the 390, 43 bhp, we were first time experiencing it. The sense of feedback and grip that you got from that tire was insane. And then my first rains in Mumbai on the 390, you backed off. Because it's not a grippy situation, it's concrete roads, it's a terrible thing. And that bike felt like it was sort of skating around. Not in the sense of sliding, but in the sense of it wouldn't settle and take a line. It would take. I said, going slower seemed to make it worse. So logically, you had to go faster. And then when you started to push these Metzelers in the wet, you're like, holy crap, they are so good. You can go so fast. And from that day onwards, when I'd see a KTM 390 with upsized tires, I'd be like, just like, you fool.
Okay, fine. Go for it.
Because it's so finely balanced.
Right.
And those tires are doing so much for this bike.
Right.
That changing that balance is just, no, it's wrong.
Right.
Why would you do it?
I've got so many points to cover right now, and I'm trying to keep them noted in my head, so I'm going to go with the first one. Upsizing, right? We all think that it's necessary. It's important to unlock the performance potential and, of course, your abilities. R15 version 1.
What a great bike.
And everybody was like, it needs bigger tires, and I was one of them. Fair enough. I'm going to, because I just thought, imagine if it had bigger tires, what a bike it would be. And sure, they listened to the audience, and with version 2, they came with wider tires. And then with version 3, and you know which bike I like the most now?
The one.
Which one do the racers like?
The one.
Because how agile it is, how light it feels, and it's still freaking planted.
Yeah.
They made it more forgiving and, better aesthetics with the wider tires. But now today, when I understand things a bit better, the bike that I really appreciate, and I would love to ride at the track again.
Yeah, I'm telling you that anybody who tells you that upsizing changed how they see their motorcycle or feel about it is probably just admitting how little they know about riding motorcycle. And it's not a problem, you can learn. But if you say, I changed my tires to a bigger size and then the bike got better, I think the manufacturer R&D knows more than you.
Right.
And they did something. You could change to grippier tires on the same size and get a massive advantage from it.
Yeah.
But changing the section of the tire is a big decision, and it doesn't always mean a great decision.
And for the car guys out there, another thing I wanted to point out was that we're talking about motorcycles a lot because there's a lot of feel and feedback required from a motorcycle and the tires then for a rider to make the most of the situation, stay safe.
Correct.
Right? Feel in control, get that sense of confidence, right? In a car that is a little bit more distant,
Yeah.
But the importance of the tire is just as critical even over there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people buy tires saying that I want it to last 50,000 kilometers. I mean, if you're going to get a tire that lasts 50,000 kilometers, you're giving something up,
Yeah.
right? You're going to have to look at price, grip, life. These are your three
variables
that you'll see,
Yeah.
right? And grip, I would say you can call it performance. And performance doesn't mean just outright, hey, is it a sporty tire? But does it handle the wet conditions well? Does it handle
Correct.
dry conditions well? Does it handle bad roads
It's the real
well?
world that you're dealing
Right?
with. Yeah.
So does it do well in those scenarios, right? And with tires, I have seen a car transform. The 800, you might think that because it was so basic, it was from, cross plies to radials. But even today with luxury cars, like I think a great example is the Skoda Octavia RS, right? When it came, not the 245, the generation before that, right? When it came, owners were like, those tires were just not up to the mark for that car. And most owners, the first thing they did was swap them out.
Correct.
Right? For a regular car buyer, a regular owner, if a car's starting to feel old, you think that it's aged and now I'm not enjoying it as much, it's not as comfortable. The one easy investment to recoup a lot of that, get that newness back is tires.
And change all of them.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic point.
Right? A lot of the motorcycle guys will ask me saying, my front looks okay and my rear's obviously gone. And can I just change the rear? Yes, you can. What you lose, and some of you will do cycles also, where you say, I'll change two fronts, I'll change two rears to one front.
Yeah.
And okay, it's a workable cycle. But to me, the newness, that feel of a motorcycle gripping well, giving good feedback, giving you confidence, requires both the tires to work together. I choose to replace both tires on all my motorcycles every single time they're due. It's not because I hate my fronts, although I am very happy to donate my front. So if somebody's standing there at the garage looking for a front tire, I'm half warned. Yeah, go for it. Take it. It doesn't matter. But then I get a new motorcycle out of it. I get that feel and feedback out of it. Right? The money that you save is important. I don't doubt it. But only if you change all the tires will you get that feeling. There's no other way to do it.
And stick to the same tires as well. This might seem obvious to most of you out there, but there are a lot of people who have asked me, can I change? My fronts are, let's say, Bridgestones and I have Michelins at the rear. They're the same size.
Do they have Yokohamas in the middle? But the spare could be an MRF, right?
Yeah, sure. Why not? No, you don't never need a spare, right? That's a spare. Anyways, so yeah.
Why is it important to match brands?
Because the performance of the tires will vary from brand to brand, from tire pattern to pattern, right? Certain characteristics will change. And you don't want that happening because as a car, when you're going through a corner, let's say, and there's a puddle, how the fronts will react versus the rear is going to be different then.
Yeah.
You don't want to manage all that stuff.
Yeah, so the strange thing is, in theory, you can get an advantage from not matching brands. For example, if you like to slide your car a lot, having an ungrippy rear versus a very grippy front will give you that advantage.
Yeah.
Okay. But the number of iterations of trial and error you would have to come to the reasonable conclusion that saying, if I put Bridgestone's this tire in the front and Michelin's that one at the back, I get the car or motorcycle to do exactly what I'm trying to do. The amount of money you'll waste trying to reach that conclusion. Just drive, man. Or just ride. I mean, why would you do this to yourself?
And on this front, 2 points, right? First, we spoke about the CBZ the Zapper not having a center groove. My fascination with tires was, you saw these big white tires and they had so many cuts and grooves and all of that. And so many decisions were about that tire looks cool, which is why I want it, right? But you realize over time that the grippiest tire is the one without any grooves.
Yeah,
right?
The least grooves are the most grip.
It's the most surface area. The grooves are required because you needed to manage water, sand, mud, all of that. Get grip in different kinds of conditions.
Yeah.
By and large, I think most patterns work fairly well. Some are better than others.
Yeah, it's a refined discussion.
Yeah.
At a core level, if you got decent amount of tread depth and a reasonably good tire, you'll do okay.
What it changes, I think Michelin does some of this fantastic. Does a fantastic job of this. Is getting ride comfort right, sound characteristics, those kind of things which are very. As you spend time with it, you realize and you value them, right?
Yeah.
But I think the bigger thing, and which is why you said tires. Who's excited about tires, right? Because but the technology that goes into making these tires, the belts, the rubber, the compounds, the mixtures, right?
Yeah.
That makes a difference, and there's no way for you to tell that by looking.
Which is so sad, right? I mean, the idea that people can't even read the numbers on the side of the tire and figure out what they mean. I can understand it as it's something to learn.
Right.
There's a lot of text in there that will give you other pieces of information, like what tire pressure should you be running, when was it manufactured. I get it.
Right.
But they are such simple looking devices with so much science and technology in there that does so much for your life.
Right.
Driving them and riding them. It's crazy that you wouldn't natively pay more attention to it. Like all you have to do is try this. Actually, don't try it. Take a pen or a pencil, go down in the morning and deflate your tires to half.
Oh.
Okay. You'll need a tire pressure gauge handy for the next thing. And you'll need some way to reinflate your tires also. And just try driving that thing. It'll feel horrible. Horrible. Why? Because the feedback that you rely on to make decisions. Should I go fast? Should I go slow? Will I be able to stop? Will I not be able to stop? Can I make that gap? Will I not be able to? They're all dependent on your tire doing their job. When you deflate them to half, they refuse to work. Right?
Okay.
Can you tell me how often you check your tire pressures? You and I do it pretty regularly. We have tire pressure gauges in the studio right now, and we know that everything that rolls out of the studio gets a tire pressure check. Every vehicle that rolls in, on the receivable document, there is a tire pressure notation, right? Why are we so anal about this? And we are stupidly obsessive about it because it dramatically changes the experience.
Oh.
How many times have you received a test bike where everything felt off?
All too often.
Right? And then you'll be like, is it adjustable suspension? Because that's one source of trouble because people don't know what they're doing with it. They haven't counted their clicks and they're all over the place. Remote problem because there's not that much adjustable suspensions around. Tires. Inflate your tires right, man.
Yeah. So how do you go about checking and adjusting tire pressures?
So on most motorcycles which I'm riding regularly, I will do a full cleanup roughly once a week. And at that point, I will check and top up all my tire pressures. So for most of that week, I am done. And at least on this KTM, my Ducati and the Tuono, I know them so intimately that when they're off, you can tell. At the racetrack, it's a little bit more complicated because it's a high pressure environment. So for the Tuono, I generally take Anand's help and he tells me what to do. But even as time passes, I know what those pressures are supposed to be. And strangely enough, if you're running Michelin slicks, what they recommend on their website actually works exactly on the racetrack. You don't even need to do any math.
And generally for the slicks, just I think slicks are high performance tires like we were talking about, right? For the racetrack. So they have no cuts or grooves. They're just full contact area to give you the maximum performance. And generally you'll find slicks will be softer rubber. So they're even unlocking more performance and grip for the rider.
They also unlock your wallet very, very nicely.
But tell me, what pressures would you run on the slicks? Higher or lower compared to
So the thing is that we are told to check our tire pressures cold because it's more consistent as a way of measuring and staying on point, right?
When a tire heats up, the pressure inside also increases, which is why the pressure readings will go up, which is why cold is
and
like
every time you start moving the tire around, it is depressed, it's deforming and it's compressing and it's the tire via hysteresis is being worn down, all of which produces heat, right? If you have a tire pressure monitoring system in your vehicle, I've seen this on the Ducati, which has one now. The tire pressure slowly starts rising as you start riding. So unfortunately, my Ducati is stupid in the sense that it doesn't show you PSI, it shows you bar, which is not our familiar unit, although technically there's no flaw there. But I'll know that, for example, 2.3 bar is my front stock and say 2.8 bar is my rear stock. But 100 kilometers down the road on a highway, that 2.3 would have gone up to 2.3, 4, 5, 6. The rear will have gone to 3.1, 3.2. And the first time you saw it, you're like, wow, that's a lot. And then you realize that that's how it works.
Right.
So at the racetrack, we assume that we will be at a higher tire temperature for a lot more time. So you'll bring down your cold temperatures a lot, right? And just to give you an example, I would run, say, a 42 rear PSI on my Ducati when I'm touring with luggage. It's 36 without. If I were to run 42 or 36 in the slick, I would not make it out of pit lane. Because that means hot. The thing will go up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 PSI, which means now you got a 48 PSI tire at the back. You'll
Too
bounce
much.
everywhere until you bounce into the grass and then over the Amco
Correct.
and into the hospital's parking lot.
Correct.
Right? So we'd run 26 rear, 24 rear, depending on how fast you're going.
Right.
I've seen Anand run even lower, closer to 21s, 22s. And also, as you did this, we realized that India, you know how the British will tell you warm up your tires before you go and all of that? On the street, at least, we don't really need to. We are ambient hot. You know, so the idea that I have cold tires, so therefore I have to spend some time being super cautious and all of that, we are very lucky. We don't have to do these things. In winter, it can catch you out.
Yeah.
Because you're not memorizing the idea that, oh, it's 18 degrees outside, so I do need to give it a little bit of a time.
And especially as many more people are riding more high performance motorcycles and cars, driving high performance cars, this is a very valid point, because when the temperature changes, early morning drives, you can feel that difference.
Correct.
You can feel the difference distinctly.
Yeah, so on the Ducati, for example, in Mumbai's weather, which is generally 30-ish degrees, no matter when you come, it's raining or not raining, but it's 30 degrees, right? I don't warm up my tires. Once my coolant temperature has gone off from low to a number, bike is ready to go. You just go as fast as you want. If I were to take it up north in the winter, I would not pull the same stunt.
Talking about your 210, yeah?
No, the Ducati. Street.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm not talking too much about the racetrack because it's not directly relevant to the tire discussion. Outside of an interest thing, you won't be able to use this information.
Right.
So on the street, do I warm up the tires on my KTM in Mumbai? No, I won't. If I lived in Delhi, would I? In the summer, I wouldn't bother, but in the winter, I'd be a lot more careful.
Right.
The other thing is, I was at CSS and I was riding something small, I think a TVS 180 or 200 or something. And we were in a row of motorcycles heading out of pit lane for a session, and everybody's going like this. And in the middle of the group is me on my RTR going arrow straight. And behind me is Bharat Reddy. You know Bharat Reddy, right? He is a very, very ardent motorcyclist. Then he had a kid, and now I think he's a very ardent car driver. So Bharat and I are going, and Bharat is a very experienced track day rider. So we are both going straight. So we come back into pit lane after the session, and Bharat comes up to me and says, "Bago, who are you?" So I said, "I'm Shumi. I work for, I think, Overdrive at that point." He's like, "Why are you not weaving your bike like everybody else is?" So I said, "Why would I weave my bike? It doesn't heat up when you do that." "How do you know that?" "How do you heat up your tires?" I said, "You can only heat up the tires by accelerating hard or braking hard. But in that group, when everybody's going like this, I don't have an opportunity to heat it or cool it. But it's Chennai, I mean, and it's a street bike with street tires. By the time I do 3-4 corners, it'll be up to temperature and it'll be good enough for me." And at that point, I wasn't very fast either. So it really didn't bug me at all. And he's like, "You're the only guy in the pit lane who's making sense. I don't know why these guys are doing like this." And it turns out that the MotoGP guys going like this has nothing to do with heating the tires, because they've just come out of tire warmers. And on that lap, when they do this usually, they end up on the grid where the tire warmers go back on. The only thing that they can do doing this is just scrub the tread a little bit and maybe find a little bit of extra grip on the top surface of the rubber. That's it.
Okay, just clean them up.
You're just cleaning them up. So all the guys who think you're going to weave like this and it makes you look like Valentino Rossi, well, first of all, you need to be a lot taller. You need to be a lot fitter. And third, it doesn't work.
We started the conversation with tire pressures, right? And how you find your sweet spot. And the track one is counterintuitive in that sense.
It is.
But it's incredible to see how it actually comes in and the feel changes. On the road also.
On the slicks, in fact, the change is dramatic. So the first time I rode slicks, Vignesh, who's one of the instructors at the TW school where I teach, Vignesh has been using slicks for a while. And my first, so I'm a little nervous. Curry Speedway 210 is a fast bike. How will I know when the slicks are warm enough? So Vignesh is a very calm person. Okay, he says, when the wheelies start, it is warm enough. I said, where will it wheelie? So he looks at me saying, everywhere. I'm like, why would it wheelie everywhere? He says, because there's that much grip. And it's true. You'll go out,
right,
and you'll have these slightly skatey sensations where the bike sort of pushes a little bit sideways as it goes. Not scary, but there's movement. You can tell that there is movement. And then like a lap and a half later or something, suddenly you do the same thing. And then the front starts to come up and you're like, oh my God, we are hot and ready to go. The slicks are just insane. It's like what you think is the limit
Cheat code.
is the beginning of what the slicks think is, hey, welcome to the club. And there's so
Thanks
much
for
left.
waking up.
Yeah, so I remember at Curry now, there is a fast right downhill, which used to be the beginning of the bowl, as we used to call it. And there's a crest there. And somebody gave me the idea saying, if you commit to that corner before the crest, that's where the real line is. That's where you go really fast. And it's a fast corner, so it's critical to get it right. Okay, let's try it, right? So I commit, and I lose the front over the crest to Ono. So 120, 30 at least. I don't know.
Wow.
I lose the front. And then it's like, it feels like a completely natural thing to happen. Because it just comes back, and then we go through the corner like nothing happened. And I'm thinking back saying, if I had an M9RR, which is a fantastic tire, or an M7RR, equally good, Road 5, Road 6, I would not be able to recover from this. So I came back into pit lane and they used the words that you were just saying. They're like, yeah, it's a cheat code. Nothing will happen. What do you mean nothing will happen? He says, when it happens, it'll be dead serious because you can push it so hard. But a slick just makes it look easy.
It's like, in that sense, you were saying it's an upgrade. It's like an all-new motorcycle in that sense.
It's
Like an
all
all-new
new.
level
Yeah.
that you've unlocked, and now you got to up your game.
And it should tell you how much the grip to life balance is, right? Because they keep pushing the grip of the slick so hard that you can run a slick out in like a weekend, like 2 days, 9 sessions. So that's 9 sessions is 180 minutes of riding.
Right.
In 3 hours of riding, you can wear out a tire completely. From it was brand new to it's completely gone.
Right.
And there was a time when slicks were 28, 30 grand. It was not such a pinch.
Now.
55 grand, 60 grand, 65 grand. It's crazy money for crazy tires. And the opposite that is what we call performance tires on the street, where you'll pay motorcycles still, you'll pay 35, 40 grand, and then that tire would last you 15,000 kilometers.
Right.
Super Corsas, almost like a slick. I think 60 or 62 grand now. And they last 5,000 kilometers at the back.
And that's why you should be paying attention to tire pressure specifically for everybody who's thinking money right now, because you can save a lot of money by being particular about tire pressures. You have the right tire pressures, not only is the experience better, you'll manage the life of your tire better. The chances of failures by way of punctures or cuts are minimized. Overinflating or under-inflating
Is both. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
There's only one reason to over or underinflate your tires.
No, it makes a difference. How the tires get damaged varies.
Yeah, the difference will always be a negative, not a positive. There's only one reason to vary your tire pressures from stock. And stock being what the OEM recommended. That's if your weight is dramatically different from what it was designed for. Okay.
Absolutely.
I would say 60, 62, 65 kilos is your sweet spot. If that's your weight, that's what the motorcycle was designed to do. You don't need to overthink it. It does not change in the summer, in the winter, in the rains. It's that pressure cold.
Yeah.
If you're significantly bigger, you might want to run slightly higher pressure. And when we say slightly higher, it's literally 2 psi more. It's not 10 psi more.
Right.
If you're much lighter, you might gain an advantage from running slightly lower tire pressures, and we're still talking 2 psi. Even at the racetrack, if I believe that my tire pressure is off, I will not come back and make a dramatic change. I will make a 2 psi change.
Right. So, go for it.
No, in the same way, that suspension, you want to change it one click at a time.
Right.
You do not change tire pressures dramatically ever.
So even on public roads for everyday kind of cars like the Ignis, right? If I'm going out on the expressway, right, and it's just usually the three of us, in which case the standard tire pressures, if I have them at cold, set them up properly, the car feels terribly bumpy, right? So I think what is important is people should also listen to their vehicles because they will be telling them what's required. So going a couple of PSI up or down, do it step by step, will help you find a sweet spot that works for you, right? Like for instance, another thing that I've noticed is like if it's particularly hot, even when you're traveling, doing long distances, I'm sure the pressure on the booster jump up significantly, right? In which case the experience has changed. I've got luggage, so it's generating more heat, more load, all of that. So I do, like you said, we are carrying our gauges, whatever. So I'm going to check the pressures. I'm going to adjust it, find a sweet spot that works for that day, and be okay with adjusting the pressures again. And the point why it makes sense with cars or motorcycles is that it will give you the sense of confidence over a variety, over a longer duration, and let you drive better, ride better. So this is something that I think people should learn to keep keep it on the radar. That it's required.
And it's critical. I mean, it's the core of the experience. Think about it. If you had a 900 bhp car and absolutely terrible tires on all the corners, what would you do with it?
Like rally cars, right? Some of them have those. Do the trucks have it? I think the Dakar trucks have it, right? They have a self-inflating system,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if they need to, they can from the inside the cabin they can inflate the
Yeah.
tires, adjust it because if they're going over sand, they drop the pressures,
Correct.
right? Ideally, vehicles would have that because
Yeah.
it can constantly maintain the right pressure.
That's the next thing, yeah.
For
That's the next thing. The next thing is that since everything is now automated, the tire pressure should also be automated. So the car should figure out.
Airless tires altogether, right? So
Thankfully,
that problem is being
eliminated. Yeah, I would leave you with 2 or 3 simple ideas. First of all, spending on good tires is the best that you can do for your car or bike. There's no way around it. Don't grudge that money. It's always a trade-off between longevity and grip. If your tires will last long, then they cannot give you too much grip. If they have lots of grip, then they can't last too long. And the third is price. I am from the school that says buy expensive, buy once and make it work. So to me, an expensive tire doesn't really faze me because I want that performance is what I am looking for. And I'm not sure that is everybody's perspective. Although I would obviously like to believe that this is the right perspective.
Right.
But choose wisely because a terrible tire is just not going to do anything for you.
And on that note, because you're saying it, Street Triple RS, fantastic motorcycle, right? But would I want the Street Triple RS for the Super Corsas? No, because those tires are going to be done like that.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, whenever I see a motorcycle with outrageously good tires, like Super Corsas, it's a very, very good example. My guard is already up because I know that I'm going to spend 12 lakh rupees bringing that thing home. And then 5,000 kilometers later, I have to spend 40,000 rupees keeping it on those tires again.
I think 5,000 is generous.
Yeah. No, I'm saying new rider.
no, yeah, I'm just...
It's not like us, right? Who knows how to extract performance. We're further down the timeline than most of the people who are watching this. But if you've just figured out what a Street Triple R is, you're able to buy one, you bring it home and it's got the Super Corsas, you'll love it. 5,000 kilometers later, the rear tire is done. The front tire is half. That's 40,000, no, actually more now, almost 60,000 rupees. Bringing it back to the shape that you wanted it to. Gets worse. You don't have 60,000 rupees. So you say, okay, I'll get an M7 RR. It's a terrific tire. And it will last 8,000, 9,000 kilometers. It's not a Super Corsa. So that feeling that you bought the bike for, you're never going to get back. Yeah. This tire, the tires that you need to get that feeling are just not possible to afford.
Okay, man, I'm just going to say this. Treat your tires well. Love them. They're awesome, okay? The wrong pressures will make a bike feel slow, heavy, terrible. A car will feel sluggish. So just do that basic bit and you're sorted, right? I mean, there's not much that you have to do. They're taking care of so much shit for you. All you have to do is check pressures regularly. That's about it.
Yeah, so I mean, tires are really simple like that. And I'm going to round this up. It's been a long one. So
has it?
Okay. Yeah, it's been a long one.
Oh, okay.
So tires are very simple, okay? The manufacturer of the tire and the machine that they're on have both worked out a lot of the hard work for you. So they're already in a very, very good place. You don't generally need to change the size of the tire ever. Not unless you're an extremely experienced driver or rider and you know exactly what you're doing. And if you think you're really experienced, you're probably not. Right? That's the Motojitsu scale of I am a 8, you're actually a 2, and in the middle is a crash, right? That's 1. 2, be very, very careful about your tire pressures. They will dramatically change both your experience, how long the tire will last, how will your vehicle feel, all of those things. And 3, sometimes we are all out of budget, but don't skimp on tires. It will destroy every single facet of your vehicle that you love so much.
As a Marwadi, I'll sell it to you better. You want the new bike, new car experience? Don't buy a new car, new bike. Just buy new tires. Sorted.
ThisConnect.